happy in Christ by their side.
Yeah.
May your streets be paved with gold.
Yeah.
Hope my whole hood make it home.
Yeah.
May your streets be paved with gold. Hope my whole hood make it home.
Cause the world can be toxic, especially when your skin look like chocolate. At one point they sold us for profit, but we made it out of the gauntlet we chosen. Yeah. On my mama, the south side still holding. Yeah. Go for broke for the ones that are broken. Yeah. Please don't make me no hashtag a slogan. Yeah. My whole hood is golden. That's why
I pray you catch your wave. Doesn't subside. This for the nappy heads in heaven. The nappy in Christ by their side. I pray you catch your wave. Doesn't subside. This for the nappy heads in heaven. The nappy in Christ by their side.
yeah.
May your streets be paved with gold. Hope my whole hood make it home. May your streets be paved with gold. Hope my whole hood make it home.
Cause they riding with choppers. It might turn your table to pasta. Don't hardly see daughters at altars. Probably cause there ain't no more fathers, they stole them. Yeah. Put in cages by racists patrolling. Yeah. The hood is a light to the pins like we bowling. Yeah. Please don't make us no hashtags or slogans. Yeah. Black people are golden. That's why
I pray you catch a wave. It doesn't subside. This for the nappy heads in heaven. Nappy in Christ by their side. I pray you catch a wave. It doesn't subside. This for the nappy heads in heaven. Nappy in Christ by their side. May your streets be paved with gold. Hope my whole hood make it home. May your streets be paved with gold. Hope my whole hood make it home.
I hope you make it home.
yeah.
I hope you make it home.
Every hood.
I hope you make it home. Whoa. I hope you make it home. I hope you make it home. I hope you make it home. Yeah.
I hope you make it home.
I hope you make it home. I hope you make it home.
Make it home. Talk to him, Luke.
Make it home.
Talk to him, Luke.
Make it home. Make it home. I hope you make it home.
Talk to him, Dave.
I hope you make it home.
Yeah.
I hope you make it home.
Black people.
I hope you make it home.
Come on, come on.
All right. Happy New Year to everyone. Thank you for coming through. Just to remind everyone, this meeting is being recorded and it's being live streamed on social media, on all of our HCEDD social media platforms. So in the case that you don't want your face to show up or in any way, shape, or form, please do, and you're welcome to turn off your video camera. Next slide. So yeah, you are here to most primarily review some of the priorities that we have within our draft for our community benefits agreement, amidst some other things, but we're just happy to have you here today. And we're going to be running all the way until 8 p.m. And we won't be going over at all. So we're excited to have you in this space right now. Next slide.
We've got a few instructions for using Zoom. So first of all, mute yourself when you're not speaking. And if you're on your cell phone, you can press *6 to unmute yourself if you'd like to speak. And then you are welcome to turn your video on or off, whatever you're most comfortable with, but keep in mind, we're live streaming and recording on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. So feel free to turn your camera off if you don't want to be on that live stream. You can also rename yourself and put your pronouns in your display name if you'd like. Please use the chat during the meeting to participate, to hype each other up, to give applause, however you like to use it. And then if you hear something that inspires you or you want to tell the world what you're hearing, you can tweet it with #ProtectTheTray. That's our hashtag. And then if you have any concerns throughout the meeting, email hello@houstoncba.org, or you can send a direct message in the chat to anyone who has co-hosts by their name. Those are the student volunteers. Shout out to them.
Next slide.
All right, we'd like everyone to introduce themselves in the chat, or if you're on your cell phone, you can unmute and tell us about yourself. But let us know your name, where you're joining us from, your organization or affiliation, and why you're here today. And then meanwhile, we're going to drop a link to a sign-in sheet so that if it's your first time, you can put in your contact info and stay in the loop.
So today, this is how things are going to go. We're going to go in 3 different parts. So today we're going to be focusing, again, we always start every single HCEDD meeting talking about what all of this is about. So for anyone who's new to any of this, has heard on Clubhouse, has heard randomly on some Twitter thread about HCEDD, and this is your first meeting, you're going to get an introduction. For some other folks, this will probably be their 15th or 16th time hearing the same thing over and again. The part 2 of this will be having a really crucial discussion about any sort of participation in an advisory circle from Rice Management Company. We'll give you some updates on what's taken place at several places, especially the Midtown TIRZ Board. And we'll be explaining what that is for folks who aren't familiar. And then lastly, which is the main portion of the meeting, which is going to be about 55 minutes long or so, we're going to be in breakout rooms. And we'll talk a little bit more about how to do that and make it very easy for folks who are joining in any capacity that you're joining, whether even on social media watching. We'll try to make it possible for you. Next slide.
All right, these are general reminders throughout the meeting. One, humans learn that by asking questions, and every single question from you all makes our whole group stronger. So please ask whatever questions you have. If anything here resonates with you, tweet it with #ProtectTheTray, and then stay until the end so you can get tapped into opportunities to get active, especially if you're an elected official.
Awesome. So let's give a real quick recap on what's all of this about. We have a new year, so I see a lot of different faces who aren't necessarily have been in this area. So first of all, welcome. Next slide. So we're going to talk, we always want to give this kind of perspective when we start out. You're here right now on Zoom. And just to give you a dive in for folks who are from Houston or aren't from Houston, or just a reminder for people who are native to the area, this is the landscape that we're looking at. If for folks who are joining in through phone, we're looking at a map of Houston, and we see a large circle around the greater Third Ward area. But we also see so many universities and higher education institutions that are very adjacent to the greater Third Ward. And we always want to remind folks that there's a long history with every single higher education institution in the area, including Texas Southern, University of Houston, and now Rice University. But Rice University has always technically been a neighbor to the greater Third Ward area. They haven't had the necessary contact with the Third Ward area. And now they're going to be getting a little bit much closer. And for folks who can see, they're going to be getting as close as the Wheeler Transit Center, which you see right under the University of St. Thomas. So there's a long history, and this is a drop in that history. Next slide. Just a reminder for folks who may not be familiar with the Third Ward area. This is an extremely small microcosm like viewpoint of the Third Ward, some things we focus on. This is a historically Black neighborhood. Over 3/4 of the resident population is Black, and a large amount of that is multi-generational. About 3/4 of the folks in the space are renters, and about half of the renters and 1/4 of the homeowners are classified as cost burden, meaning that they spend over 1/3 of their income on housing expenses. And what we know about that is that when you're cost burden, the amount of choices and that you can make is are very limited in a way. And any sort of changes to the neighborhood that affect any sort of your housing cost or any cost of living in the area will affect you greatly. Next slide. Just also for folks who can't see this this graph, the graph that we're looking at shows there's a large overrepresentation of folks who are making less than or household income of less than $10,000 in the Third Ward area. So this is something very central to our work to know, because any sort of changes in the neighborhood will affect that population more than others. And we keep them as center focus in this work as we continue going on. Next slide. But as you see, most of the data that I just gave you came from a Third Ward Comprehensive Needs Assessment data report that was actually done in partnership between the Baker Institute over at Rice University and the Sankofa Research Institute. And what they noted is, although all this stuff that I just talked about and the history that has kind of been of oppression onto the Third Ward area, and we can talk about that for days, but we won't right now. A large population of residents love their community. They love the area. They have little desire to move. Third Ward is known to be one of the most civically active communities in the Houston area, and in my view, empirically, the country. So really, there's so much opportunity, so much potential, and so much work that's already being done in the Third Ward, and we're really here to make sure that that continues in good spirit and equitable fashion. Next slide.
All right, this is a map of the ION, the Innovation District, and then the Innovation Corridor. And so this is the development that we're talking about. The ION is one building at the center right there near, we're at the Sears building by Wheeler Transit Center. That's just the very center of a larger innovation district that's 17 acres around the ION. And then further than that, all the way from downtown to the Med Center is the Innovation Corridor. But what we focus on in HCEDD is the Innovation District, because that is the development that Rice Management Company is building. Next slide. Okay, so here's zooming in on Rice Management Company's land holdings. Shows all of these buildings that they're in control of. We can see that this will be going on for decades. So the ground has already been broken and they're building the ION, but all the way until 2030, they'll be constructing, and the ripple effects will be for decades and generations. So y'all are familiar, likely familiar with this area with the Fiesta in this area, but we know that the effects are going to reverberate throughout Third Ward. Next slide.
So just a quick introduction of Rice Management Company for folks who aren't familiar. We always like to say that RMC is pretty much the sugar mamas and sugar daddies of Rice University. They manage the $6.5 billion endowment over at Rice. They make sure that that endowment is not only sustained and healthy, but also exponentially rising over time. So this much of the innovation district, and they've said it very clearly, is an investment opportunity for them. Next slide.
And the reason we need to do this work, to do the CBA, is because the innovation district is an existential threat to Third Ward and a precedent for how this city is going to grow over time. We know that in all of the cities in the United States, Houston is second to last for inclusivity of low-income and minority residents in economic prosperity. So we need to set a new precedent for what it means to grow economically and who benefits from economic prosperity, who decides how prosperity happens.
And right now, and when we say it's an existential threat as planned, right? It's really crucial to know at this very beginning, because I think I have to say this very clearly, HCEDD has never been against the innovation district. The HCEDD has always been interested in an innovation district that's equitably, that makes sure that all the benefits that come out of that area are equitably distributed. But right now we see that it's failing to follow that mission. There's been quite many reports of many of the workers on the site right now being exploited. And you can go ahead and look at the exploitation-free zones on social media to hear more about that. We know that they've already been a part of exacerbating food access issues in the area. Yes, the Fiesta, their rent was due, and they could not necessarily make means possible to stay. However, Rice Management Company decided to instead make sure that Greentown Labs, a clean energy incubator, was put there instead of looking for folks who would be grocers in the area. So they are a part of that work. And there's already been, we already see a untapped or untouched large issue of displacement and cultural erasure that's already taking place in the area. We can see that a lot of folks have been moved. We have no idea how they've been moved from the other area. A lot of houses folks have been moved from the area. For folks who are aware of the Wheeler Transit Center kind of landscape. And just overall cultural erasure that's continuing to take place. We always want to respectfully mention that that George Floyd was a native of the Third Ward area. And one of the main reasons that he had to move was because there was not enough economic opportunity for him within the area. So when we talk about this whole thing, I think this is all on the social media, and we talk about Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter. We know that lives aren't lived in silos, right? Lives are lived in communities. So if we're going to be focusing on the sustainment of Black lives, we need to make sure that their communities are as prosperous as ever. So this is really central to our work. Next slide. So let's talk about HCEDD. We just said all those things. We want to give you a real quick, I'm going to go kind of quick. And we want to make sure that we always uplift. We can't solve problems with the same level of thinking that created them. So we're out here trying to do some new cool stuff. I'm trying to be PG in case the kids are watching. Next slide. So who's HCEDD? HCEDD is a large coalition of neighbors, community leaders, scholars, students, and organizations from the Third Ward and across Houston. Next slide. And we're here to do four things. We're here to develop, secure, enforce, and sustain a community benefits agreement, which we'll be explaining. This community benefits agreement would be with Rice Management Company as they're developing the innovation district, the entire innovation district on the edge of Third Ward. Next slide. Just to give you an overview of the 31 organizations. Let's see. Okay, I got you. So the 31 organizations in the space, as you can see, there's a large diversity of organizations, from faith-based to education organizations, to uh, uh, advocacy organizations, arts organizations, and most of them are in the Third Ward area, all for this work, all for this CBA, all for this effort of doing things a little bit differently. So I'm going to talk about that. Next slide. So what's a community benefits agreement? To make it very simple for folks, it's a contract between a community coalition and a developer or city entity, right? The cities are normally, we normally see cities come in several different ways, which I can answer later, but it's a contract, right, between these groups. And what they are is they're legally binding, they're enforceable agreements. So as opposed to an MOU, there are things that we commit to and we put in, we give some legal power behind it. And what's in this contract, it's literally a list in very strong specificity of benefits that are going to come out of said development for folks who are part of the community. So we are the community coalition that is spoken of in this situation. Rice Management Company is the developer that we're speaking of. And just to let you know, this was cited by Madeline Janis wrote this really great definition of CBAs that we cite that Jeffrey Lowe. I need to get some water. It's been a long day. That Jeffrey Lowe over at the Texas Southern University professor is cited, and he's been very helpful in this work as well. Next slide. So for folks who are watching, I'll give a quick example of explanation of what we've seen, right? What has development looked like in the city of Houston and really all over Texas normally? What normally happens whenever there's this large development, or really any development of any size, and there's this external developer, a private developer, we see that they have only really only deep conversation with the city or any sort of redevelopment agencies. They normally come through and they have all the treasures, and they're normally negotiating with the city. And what happens is that several different groups who have actual legitimate needs, whether that be church groups, unions, affordable housing groups, environmental groups, neighborhood groups, they come through and they see what's happening. They see it's happening in their area or somewhere that's adjacent to the communities that they serve. And they say, whoa, I want to make sure that's that the various needs of my group are especially taken care of. And what normally happens, just because of the way processes take place and existing power dynamics because of money and political clout, we see that these groups are normally throwing their needs at the wall, hoping that they get a handshake or some MOU, or hoping just that anything sticks. We see a lot of money that's put in these organizations just to try to get a handshake. And sometimes these handshakes don't have too much weight between it. So it really puts the average person who's being affected deeply by these developments in a power imbalance. And make sure that there's no really agency that they have a part of in the development of their community. Next slide. So what happens when there's a CBA involved, right? So all those groups that I was just mentioning before, the church groups, the unions, environmental groups, affordable housing groups, all those groups, what does it look like if those groups came together, they started talking about the needs, benefits, and dreams that they want to see come out of this development, or the needs that are taken care of, and the benefits and the dreams that are attended to, and they have a deep dialogue, a long dialogue, one in which they disagree, and there's much conflict, and there's much hoorays, there's many, a lot of food, if you were post-pandemic, a lot of joy, a lot of laughter, a lot of arguments. And they talk about specifically in the context of this development, what does it look like that we need, right? What does equity look like for us in our geographical area for the people who are most affected by this development? So that's us. That's HCEDD. We're that coalition. What we see is that when you're able to make that draft, you're able to go in front of the developer and have very honest dialogue and very research informed dialogue about the very needs and concerns that you have. And normally when cities come in, if they're not the developer, they come in to maybe get the developer to the table. They may give some sort of information needs, right? If both of y'all want to do some sort of tax benefit in some way, shape, or form, the city or some county kind of body needs to be there to kind of help you, write that out and make sure it's certified. But it posits the average person in a much different relationship with these developers who often want to do very much good by the community, right? Next slide. So the purpose of our CBA are two things, in really two big things. One is short term, is to build this innovation district in a way that's equitable and it addresses the needs, concerns, and visions of the people who are around or in surrounding communities of the innovation district who are most vulnerable to the displacement and cultural erasure. But also long term, what we know is that this would be technically one of the first CBAs, or one of the most genuine first CBAs in the state of Texas. And we want to set a new precedent for how development looks like in Houston. And hopefully we can also help other folks in other cities do the same, because we have to change the way that we're doing development. Doing the same thing as trying to hit a problem at the same level as which it was created is the worst thing to do, especially with the stakes that we're looking at right now. Next slide. And just let y'all know, if y'all have any questions, do drop it in there. But what you're seeing is the process that we kind of took from other folks who have done this across the country. And this is the process that we're been going by. Alec, if you can kind of go to the next slide. And so this is where we are right now. We've already formed a negotiation team. Rice Management Company has been acting a certain way to try to not start negotiations. We'll talk about that. But this work has been happening since November of 2019. I and other student organizers from different universities, but most of them are from Rice. I'm not from Rice. Have been working on this work with several of the people who are on this call right now. Y'all have been coming through since November 2019. Many of you have been a part of these conversations. I'm seeing the participant list right now. So from young and old, folks came through and have been doing this work. So I just wanted to give a second to thank you. I want to thank all the volunteers who are doing all the things behind the scenes, and you can't see any of the things right now because they're doing a lot of stuff. Because it's really, this matters that we really hit this process with as much diligence as possible. Next slide. So yeah, go ahead, Mary Claire.
Okay, I wasn't sure who's talking about this. We're just running through, the story, how we got to where we are now. So early on, in the summer before 2019 and in the fall, students were making a lot of noise, getting a lot of attention in the press, and basically trying to make it so that if you don't think of the Innovation District without thinking of Third Ward and without thinking of who is going to be a part of this future. And so we pressured Rice Management Company to answer to this demand for a CBA. And in response, Houston Mayor Sylvester Turner and Rice Management, they did a handshake, and they said, Andy Icken, who's a white man from Humble, Texas, he is the Chief Development Officer for the City of Houston. And he was installed to negotiate an agreement between the City of Houston and Rice Management Company. So again, a CBA is between a developer and a community coalition. But they set Andy up to have an agreement between the developer and the city, and they thought that will please them. That will silence them. And of course, that's not what happened. Next slide. So at around the same time, we were gathering to identify our priorities for the CBA. So this is a very rigorous, very very intense, very long discussions of what it is that we need to see the Innovation District produce, what realities in all of these 7 working groups. And just to brag on ourselves, like most CBAs have maybe 3 categories or so, like a bit of affordable housing, some jobs, but y'all wanted all of these elements in here were important to community members and to leaders and building on the work that is going on in Third Ward. So these 7 working groups have been going strong for the past year, and we'll revisit them later tonight. So please do stay for breakout rooms. Next slide. Okay, so those 2 things are going on at once, the pressuring and the developing the CBA itself, so that when we do get the pressure, we're ready to go. We're ready to negotiate, to deliberate with Rights Management Company. So the coalition stuck to its values. We said, we're not settling for an agreement that's not a community benefits agreement. It can happen, and that's all right. You know, Rice can do what it wants with the city, but we are looking for a community benefits agreement. And if a CBA is not created, negotiated, and signed and enforced by a community coalition formed by impacted individuals and groups, then it's not a CBA at all. Next slide. So we elected the negotiation team by a democratic process, and that team will show you on the next slide is a diverse and intergenerational group of individuals, and they are accountable to the community. They only follow community-made decisions, and so any action they take with regards to Rice Management Company, any meeting they go to, their number 1 job and their only job is to bring the decisions that you all make and deliver those to Rice Management Company. So there were 3 responsibilities: attend CBA deliberations with Rice Management, invite experts to assist with deliberations on specific topics, and then present issues raised in deliberations to community members in meetings like this for discussion and decision making. Okay, so throughout this time, I just want to emphasize that this whole time, it's been us, it's been the community members who have been delivering education, both amongst ourselves, but also to the public about what a CBA is and how they've been happening all over the country in cities like Houston, cities smaller than and larger than Houston, Black and Brown communities across the country, and how it has completely transformed the standard for how development can happen. So that's us. We've been educating ourselves. We are educating our elected officials, and Rice University is not the authority on CBAs, neither is the city of Houston, because they've never done one before. Only a community can say what a CBA is, because CBAs are led by community. So yeah, and we've hosted panels with brilliant experts like Murtaza Baksamusa. Those are on our link tree if you ever want to really nerd out about CBAs and learn like just how powerful they are and why. Go on YouTube and you can find that on our YouTube page. And then on our Instagram page, we have all sorts of resources and information that really breaks down how these work and why they're powerful and why they are unprecedented in Houston. So going forward, I want to emphasize this education piece because we don't typically think of ourselves as educating our elected officials, but that's a lot of what needs to happen to make sure that we have a CBA that is truly a CBA and that meets the standard for what we need.
So what we're looking at, just to let y'all know, Rice Management Company has a process that they're going by in reaction to all the work that we're doing. And this is not a thing that they wanted to do themselves, but because we were coming to them very honest and letting them know in great detail why their development was disproportionately going to affect the low income and especially Black residents in the area, they decided in reaction to host these HOU Innovate workshops back in, I believe, September or October, something like that, October, which were a huge fail. A lot of, and this is greatly documented. A lot of residents were unhappy, whether they knew of HCEDD or not. They were unhappy that the chat was closed, that their questions were not answered. They had legitimate questions. We have someone who's here who says that they did not like any of those workshops. And they were three very short workshops that were 2 hour long, and they took 3 of our topics, not the whole 7, and decided to have those workshops. Unfortunately, those didn't work out for them. The second thing that they've been trying to do is have this advisory circle, which we're going to be talking a lot with, which makes them, as the developers who are set to benefit the most, they've been convening these individuals that are largely not from the Third Ward area to have some sort of advisory circle and have their own agreement of some sorts. It's not a CBA, but they've been trying to do that. And those are the 6. That's the process that they gave in one of the letters that you can see on our link tree. I believe that was the November 17th letter or something along those lines. And then the last one is a quote from a Houston Public Media article on this, where I believe Florian Martin asked Sam DK, who works at the Rice Management Company, what's up? And he's basically said that the agreement to put in those benefits in writing will be with the city of Houston, not community groups, although this is a thing to benefit communities. So yeah, next slide. What we're seeing here with this process is it's not research-based. It's actually just based off of the tradition of how development is normally take place. It's not evidence-driven. It's definitely not community-led. So the conclusion is it's not innovative whatsoever. It's not equitable whatsoever. And what we know is that if we keep doing the same thing over and over and over, we're going to see decades of trauma, decades of violence, right? So all this work is preventative, right? Like what we're trying to do here is prevent the same narrative materializing in the Third Ward area and surrounding communities. Next slide. Just a quick, and we'll go a little faster. So just a little overview of the correspondence. You can go ahead and take a look at our link tree. Noelle, if you can put that link in there for folks. If you're interested in looking at the letters of correspondence with folks, before on the 17th, folks asked, sorry, give me 1 second. So RMC, so I'm getting a lot of different messages from different people. Give me 1 second, y'all. So on November 17th, RMC invited HCEDD in response to HCEDD asking RMC to give some more information about what they can give to community members and what their process looks like. They invited HCEDD to participate in an advisory circle, and they asked for our framework. That's literally what they said in the letter. They asked for the framework. In the 23rd, we went ahead and we first we gave them the detailed framework. So if you go in the letter, the first thing you'll see is we gave them that framework. We gave the research behind it. We cited very heavily. We went ahead and asked them as well to give them the research behind their process as a research into, university, as one who has had a resolution passed by their student body asking for an equitable innovation district. We just wanted to make sure there was research behind their process. And we gave them the conditions that we wanted to kind of see met or addressed in order to participate in the advisory circle. And these are the conditions that y'all spoke about, or at least the community spoke about in our live stream in 2020, right? On the December 1st letter that you'll see that RMC didn't address any of the conditions, and all they said, and they didn't provide any research. If you look, it's one page, and they said they believe that their process is the right thing, pretty much. That's what. There is a lie now floating that's HCEDD does not want to participate. Now, what we see very clearly and what the evidence shows is that RMC did not respond to the letter or the contents of the letter. They just said, we're not reading that. this is what we're doing. So just want to let folks know, in the case that you see the mayor or any official kind of say these things, I want to make sure that you have the evidence. I want to make sure you have the links so you can check out our link tree to see all of that information. Next slide. So just to let you know, these were our 6 conditions. We wanted them to change their name of their advisory circle to CBA working group. Or from CBA working group to advisory circle, because if they want to do this thing, then they should probably call it the advisory circle, just out of respect for the long history of work on CBAs across the country, and just also respect for their name as an institution. It's probably not the best thing to put out like a fake name that's kind of misrepresentative of what they're trying to do. We were trying to get as all of the negotiation team members to sit in on advisory circle meetings. I know that folks in the community have been interested in, dwindling that number down, and they're open to that. So we'll talk about that as well, but they didn't respond on that. The third thing is that we wanted them to give us a list. Like, if you were invited to a party that's like high stakes, you asked the question like, who are gonna be there? So we wanted to make sure the community was aware of who would be working with us to make sure that these benefits were materialized, but they didn't do that either, and they still have not done that, at least not publicly. The fourth one.
Sorry, this is Asada. I just also
Yes.
want to just clarify that what a part of that was this question of transparency. You know who's on our negotiating team. You know how those individuals were chosen, right? You participated. It was transparent. Everyone always says vote. Young people need to vote. Black people need to vote. Latinos need to vote because they
Oh, you muted on accident.
participate in democracy. So we have created a democratic process that's accountable and transparent. And we were asking them the same thing. What was your process? Who are these individuals? So I just want to say the values underneath the things we're asking for, we're trying to model what we're trying to be. The community wants democratic participation. They want transparency. They want accountability. And we want them to do the same thing minimally if they want to establish a trust for us to believe that they are moving forward in a way that's equitable.
Thank you so much, Asada. Right. And what we see in those last conditions that we wanted to see addressed at the very least, is we wanted to make sure that there was an explanation of what would benefit HCEDD by redoing all the work that it's been doing for over a year. And lastly, we wanted to make sure that no matter what sort of, large or small participation that HCEDD has in that advisory circle, that there's some sort of agreement that's exclusive to that entire process. We wanted them to at least address these things, but they did not address them. They decided to say, we're doing the right thing. And now they're floating this lie that HCEDD doesn't want to be in the advisory circle, which has never been said. Next slide.
And can I just also add that it doesn't bode well for building a trusting, honest relationship when you know that the definition of a community benefits agreement and this legal term, and then you create another process and you call it a community benefits agreement process. That also lends a broken sense of trust that we're not going to operate honestly. You buy a pig, but you buy a squirrel, but you name it a pig. Like we didn't make it up. We are stepping into a legal framework, and that legal framework is an established framework. And so we just feel very concerned. This thing that people are doing, these are academics, these are professionals. Why would you not honor or be honest about like you couldn't go into a courtroom, and if they say bring a driver license and I say, but I brought my AAA card and my Costco card, I can't make that a driver's license. That's a Costco card. It's not a driver's license, right? And nobody would accept that as valid identification because it is not the thing in which you've asked me for or that is defined as a driving license. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you so much, Asada. So in this next slide, right, we wanted to remind y'all, first of all, that strong people don't need strong leaders. And in doing so, we continue the tradition in the space, especially as students, especially as people who are not residents to the Third Ward area. We wanna make it very easy for us to have this conversation right now. So next slide. The question right now for discussion, and you can feel free to unmute or you can comment in the chat. I won't say your name if you comment in the chat. What's should HCEDD participate in the Rice Management Company's advisory circle, right? And if yes, why and what way do you kind of see that happening? And if not, why? We're gonna go ahead. I'm gonna copy and paste this and put this in a chat. Anyone can feel free to unmute and let us know what they think.
I want to start because we've had a lot of discussion as the organizing team and the negotiating team, and we wanted to bring back this a very engaging conversation to this group because ultimately we're accountable to this group. I cannot express how much sadness that I feel that I'm gonna try to make it as plain as I can. You know, we worked hard. The community benefits agreement came out of the work of the Emancipation Economic Development Council, which started in 2015. And it took a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to get that work done, to come up with some policy strategies, and then to get it put into what's called the Third Ward Complete Communities Action Plan. So the reason why the mayor agreed to the community benefits agreement, because it was a part of our action plan. And that took thousands of volunteer hours by so many people, putting their blood, sweat, and tears and all their hopes and desires in trying to preserve, protect, and revitalize the historic Third Ward. And this makes me very emotional because nobody believed in our little group of residents, renters, people that don't own property, just people just wanting and believing that things could be different for the historic Third Ward. And so then we get this amazing group of students, Mary Claire and all these students that come and say, we care about this community and we want Rice University to do the right thing. And then we bring our hopes and aspirations back together again and create this coalition. And we do all this work, we meet, we gather. I remember summers meeting in the EDC's first office with the students in a small room, a house converted into an office, but we're there with snacks, you know, just trying to move ourselves forward. We win the victory of the community benefits agreement. And I want to tell you how deeply emotional this makes me. And then people who had not been part of this struggle and this effort get a seat at the table at our expense. I just want to tell you how fundamentally wrong that feels to me. That the people who fought so hard for that CBA now have been given, and Rice Management gets to go out to their friends and the people they like and the people they know and say, hey, you can come and be a part of this. I ordain you to have a seat at the table to decide what is going to happen to the historic Third Ward. I want you to know how deeply egregious that is to me. In the aftermath of everything that happened at the Capitol, in the aftermath of what happened to George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, in the aftermath of the celebration of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., in the aftermath of the beginning of Black History Month and James Weldon Johnson and all that he did to create this month. It feels particularly painful that any other group of African-American leaders would take a seat at that table ahead of the people who fought for that table. That feels particularly egregious. So I just want you to know that I don't take this conversation lightly. And the ideal of righteousness and justice is not something that I have not been thinking about ever since we found out the list of people who are part of that group. And so I'm one of the people, despite everything I've said to you, to say that there's some business at that table that we need to be a part of. And that being at that table does not obligate us to stop the fight that we're fighting for, the true fight, the true struggle, the true victory for a community benefits agreement that is accountable to a community and not a group of leaders who have no accountability to this community. Who have no accountability to this community. This coalition has an accountability, and we hold ourselves accountable, and we create a vulnerability in a space of participation that nobody else has done. And I am going to stand on that, because that's the truth, and that's what makes this different. Unlike any other groups who are sitting at that table, who are part of paid memberships or nonprofits that are run by boards or private individuals, and the list goes on. So I just want to say, I do think that we should have some representatives at that table, not aside of Nicole Richards, but I think some people should be at that table, holding space and holding people accountable. Because if not us, then who? And if not now, then when? And it does not stop us from continuing the real struggle and battle that we're waging for true change in Houston.
Thank you. I want to uplift some things in the comments before the next person speaks. Someone's wondering, like, what's the point? If no trust, then why engage? Another person is reluctant to participate because they feel they're going to be dismissed or our demands are going to be dodged. And being in their presence will kind of give them some sort of inclusion points. One person saying, yes, we should not give up. Engagement is an uphill climb. I look at changing the name of Emancipation Boulevard. We did it. And I think there's a way. Good works do not go unrewarded. Someone's saying they can really feel the fatigue in your voice, Asada. It's been a long time coming, so I feel that. And someone said that in one of the last meetings, our guest speakers, y'all can check out at Linktree, at our Linktree to look at that last meeting. This was a speaker from Nashville who went through a CBA process. This person in the Zoom chat is saying that the guest speakers seem to be of the mindset that we should be leveraging our position with the city to bring RMC to the table. Should we be reassessing our rules of engagement in this process? Lastly, another person said, absolutely, we must have a seat at the table. Anyone want to unmute and give some thoughts as well?
Good evening. This is Curtis Davis. How are you?
Good, thank you.
I appreciate Asada's reflections in terms of community struggles. They're not, unfortunately, they are not unique to struggles all around the country. I would say that building trust is key, given the distance between the community's point of view and rights management's point of view on this subject. So any kind of activity that works to build trust is reasonably worth the investment, right? And there have been, and communication is generally a good focus to make. There are a lot of details in the structural relationship between this development process, the city's economics, and the city's social fabric. And it's difficult to lead a process that gets everybody on the same page talking about the same thing. And so I would go into this with that understanding and make some determinations about what, or come to some reasonable set of expectations as these meetings go on. That is, every meeting, the group that's representing us who's participating should come back and say, what's a reasonable set of expectations for the next meeting, and report that back based on what we're learning. So part of the process is learning. From a strategic point of view, and one of the questions that was asked as to whether or not there should be an assessment or reassessment of your strategy. Typically, as I understand it, and as I've had experience in CBAs around the country, the power of the community generally is leveraged through the cities or the authority who's making the approvals for that project. It's leveraged through their approval process. And that if the community agrees with the project, that's what you are brokering with. I think there needs to be some serious reconsideration of what is the brokering leverage of the group. And there's some things to be considered. And that's one kind of thing to be addressed. From a tactical point of view, and again, I see going to these meetings as a tactical response rather than a strategic response. From a tactical point of view, I think it's always good if, to have the engagement and to see where there are opportunities to build trust, right? The whole notion of a CBA is that we don't trust that what gets agreed to gets done unless we have a legal framework to do it, right? So it's a tool to kind of assure a certain kind of performance because you don't trust, right? If there was trust, you wouldn't need it. You could sit down and the conversations could be happy and kumbaya. So I think there's some deep discussions that need to still go on that are reflective from the point of view of this initial engagement. I'll just end with the kind of an analogy of what American Indian culture would do. When two tribes were close to war over an issue, one tribe would send an ambassador, that person who basically represented their tribe, and they would live with the other tribe to really kind of get an understanding of that tribe's point of view. And come back after a year, maybe a whole season, and report back to his chief, and it was him in those days, his chief, as to what he learned. And I think that going into it from that point of view would be good. It's very easy to be dogmatic and to characterize organizations, and sometimes you got to do it just to be clear and be focused. But you are dealing with people, and people have motivations, and people are representative of the organizations. And by sitting down with a close ear and people who are wise and are open and are willing to bring back what they hear and not just go to be heard, that would help the group a lot to reformulate its strategy. So that's my recommendation.
Thank you so much, Curtis. There's someone in the chat is asking whether or not we should try to advocate for a CBA to be a part of the developers agreement that's currently taking place between the city and RMC. For developers, a developer agreement is standard, and it always takes place between the city and a developer. Now, this person is mentioning why don't we try to get the CBA within a development agreement? Now, that's an important discussion. And what I would offer you is that right now is like a little bit secondary on whether or not HCEDD will participate in the advisory circle, right? Because then the question is, what are we going to be advocating for? So I'm going to make sure that is the top of the discussion, right? If that's okay for our next one. But the question is, with these months going by, should HCEDD be participating in that advisory circle? Our elected officials, someone's asking what our elected officials are saying. They're not saying too much. There are appointees on the Midtown board, which we'll be talking about, who have had very teeny bit discussion about this in their public meetings. Our elected officials at the city level haven't necessarily gone out of their way to say a lot. I know that there are some background conversations that they do have, but they haven't necessarily done too much publicly. Jules actually has given support.
And in our one-on-one meetings, they did suggest, that they did encourage us to be part of this advisory group. they did ask us, I guess maybe from the work of the lobbyists and other people, that they asked us why were we not a part of this group. And I think we tried to make the distinction that the group was a way of getting around and taking power away from the community.
Mm-hmm. So they have recommended that HCEDD participate. Some folks are saying that we should get a seat at the table. Another person is saying, without any sort of like straightforward, really powerful leverage at the moment, participating seems like the best chance that HCEDD has, despite any of the lack of current trust.
And I just want to say, it's not the best chance. The best chance we have is building the voice and the strength of our community and staying the course. I am in totally agreement that we should go to these meetings. We should be part of this group. But I don't want to divorce the fact that our best chance is not in a backdoor smoke-filled room. And I'm saying all that, and you say, Asada, so why are you saying we should go? Because I agree with Curtis, every opportunity to build trust and also to build knowledge and awareness and accountability of the people who are in that room, right? Because deals are going to be made, things are going to be done, and no way should that ever be something that's not documented for the history books. Because what happens here is a defining moment in the future of this community. Make no mistake about it, but our power lies within us, and power lies within our ability to organize, mobilize, and engage, our community and others outside of Houston. So if you ask me what's our best strategy, it's to make this a national issue, right? And to put the rightful light on this city and what is happening. That's our one of the best strategies. So I'm sorry I just want to say that I'm being passionate and I'm saying do it, but not because I believe that they have the power to determine our future. I don't believe that. I still believe what Ella Baker said. So I just want to clarify that. I don't want you guys to think that I think that they are the answer to our problem, because they are the problem themselves.
Curtis's remarks earlier kind of hit at that concern about whether or not we're going to be dismissed or our demands are going to be dodged, because it seems that if we go the route that Curtis was also mentioning, then having this back and forth conversation on this sort of live stream platform until we all get vaccinated, obviously, is the strongest matter. And, taking from what Asada just said, being educated and being a part of these discussions and continuing to come back over and over and over and understand what we all kind of feel like is probably the best course of action amidst whatever decision we make here, right?
Because for so long, and I think this is an important moment, and you say, why talk about it? You can look through there and see people from, One World Strategies on this call, people from Rights. Why have this open conversation? Because the way of building political power and the way of strengthening a community can't be in a lockbox. Everybody's got to see this happen, because that's what happened in the civil rights movement, right? The students were organizing, the community was fighting, to get justice, and then some people in a backdoor room, Black, power brokers decided that they would end segregation on behalf of the community. That was not the fight for them to take for us. And I'm still saying that the goal here is to let the community, because no matter what happens to this community, I want us all to have had an opportunity to be part of this struggle to save it, preserve it, and protect it. And we've got to be educated, because there's going to be another community in 2 weeks and 3 weeks and 4 weeks. And so we're fighting on behalf of all communities, and we've got to lay a precedent for how this is done. And so we're having this conversation because we committed to being open and transparent. And this is where it happens. So if others disagree with me, please, let's talk about it. We can. And that's what they're afraid of. They're afraid of dialogue. They're afraid of engaging in the issue. Oh, we can't handle it. They're afraid of conflict. But that's not how change happens and new ideas are formed when you are unwilling to engage and have an open conversation. And we're not afraid of them. That's why we're doing it on this platform, which is being live streamed. And trust me, they're listening to it. And I'm okay with that, because what I say to you here is what I say to them there. I'm consistent everywhere I go so that I don't have to worry about tracking the lies that I tell.
Very true. Very true. Asada is consistent. I am a witness of that. Some folks are in the comment section are saying some things as well. I agree with the speakers, participate in the advisory group, but also continue to push for CBA. Some folks are questioning how we're going to get at this transparency issue. So if we can get some connections to the Houston Chronicle, that'd be helpful. We are not opposed to lettering any sort of op-ed. So if you do have any sort of connections to that, feel free to send an email to hello@houstoncba.org. If we attend, another person saying if we attend, it should be our negotiation team. The optics of this only benefits RMC unless we form some leverage to dictate the terms. I agree.
Sorry, I think that was a question, like, should it be our negotiation team?
Oh, should it be our negotiation team?
Yes, that's what we've maintained. That's what the negotiating team, that's what's been offered, is members of the negotiating team to participate in the negotiating team, so they couldn't make that decision without the coalition's involvement in it. So yes, that's what the plan is, or the intention is.
So
because you elected negotiating team, right? They're the only ones that can go because they're the only ones that you chose.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, Lois.
Lois, go ahead.
And if I'm not mistaken, they said that they're limiting how many members of the negotiation team. So that was another point of contention. We were like, okay, so if we're going to be a part of the, at the table and everything like that, we would like every member of the negotiation team to be there. And if they're going to put a certain limit, it should be kind of like 4 open seats or whatever, that any negotiation team member can come through at different times and stuff like that. And so.
Mm-hmm.
So just to clarify on that, this is John, I asked that question. I'm not by any means saying it shouldn't be those people, right? Like, I'm perfectly fine with that. But to have them labeled as a negotiation team when it's not a negotiation, right?
Mm-hmm.
It creates an option for them to be able to say, see, we're working with their negotiation team, so we're negotiating something, but this is not a negotiation. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not saying don't use the people. I'm saying, do we need to dictate like how they use that term? Is all I'm saying.
Absolutely. Great point.
One way to get, I think that was an excellent point, and your negotiating team there is in fact assuring transparency on your behalf, right? It's one way to think about it. And I think that from a point of view of this engagement, it's really important that you have a regular touchstone with your members to participate, to develop a collective understanding of what's going on. It's very easy for things to kind of disappear from the larger group, and I think to consistently think about your organizing effort is really important, because part of the trust issue from, say, Rice Management's point of view is that their attitude is that the community doesn't know what it's doing, right? Or doesn't know about this process, or who do we deal with, or those kinds of questions. And it happens all the time between developers and communities. 15 years ago, when I was involved with the Boston Civic Design Commission, one of our biggest challenges was getting developers to work with communities. So somebody got the bright idea that says, hey, you don't get to come to the board to present your project until you've met with the community, and the community comes to that meeting as well and talks about their point of view about your project. And that kind of began to change the relationship between a lot of developers and communities. Now, it's nowhere near CBA because it wasn't that type of relationship, so I don't want to suggest that it was. But what it did do was change the relationship in terms of the community's power, because the developers knew that unless they had a legitimate dialogue with the community at some level, such that representatives of the community were willing to come to that Boston Civic Design Commission meeting and speak about the project, they weren't going to even get a hearing. And so people would come sometimes against the project, sometimes for the project, sometimes mixed opinions. But at the very least, the community's posture was changed because they were an equal partner in the dialogue. So I think you should not ever lose sight of your overall goal about a CBA, but I think having a deeper understanding about the process and to understand where your influence and leverage is really important, and to understand who the key players are and what are their drivers. Really, having a real understanding of what the Midtown Redevelopment Authority's role is in this and what their drivers are. Clearly, the city has a variety of roles in this. Rice Management as a development entity versus Rice Management as an investor for the university, two totally different points of view. So I think as you engage and begin to understand these relationships, you'll be better positioned to strategically put forward approaches that would get you closer to the objective of having a trusted relationship with Rice Management. The CBA is a legal document to assure that. That's the strategy. But the goal is to have some assurance that your objectives will be met as it relates to this project's role in meeting those objectives. That's the end game here. And this notion of equitable development and what it means, what does it look like to them, and what does it look like to you, that's a place where you can begin to have that conversation. No, it's not a negotiation, but it's a very important part of any negotiation to begin to establish trust and understanding.
And I do want to get y'all in breakout room, so let me get to some of these.
Yeah, and does anybody else have any questions? We do want you to please, Sweet Honey in the Rock says, put power to your own voice. So if you have a question or a thought or something to weigh in, please don't hesitate. Should we take two representatives from the coalition in the way of the group that was selected to be able to bring back participation and information in the group of people who are the elected by this body? Should we do that, or what are your thoughts?
Mm-hmm. One person in the chat says that the normal process is that the city and the developer work out an agreement without any public input. And HCEDD has created a situation in which RMC feels like they have to have some sort of public process and agreement, even if it's not a real CBA negotiation at this point. And they want to recognize and applaud that victory as well as express their strong belief that HCEDD will transform this advisory circle process into something real and powerful. Someone says there's a lack of difference. There's a difference between lack of trust and distrust, right? In this instance, we're in a situation of distrust, for sure. Okay, this is the uncomfortable part that I had to do online that I'd rather have done in person. I can see all of your faces. So I'm gonna put this idea out here and then let me know what y'all think, okay? The majority of the responses looks like most folks are saying, yes, do participate, but participate with a lot of caution and a lot of plan for more consistent updates and more permission taking from the community. I'm wondering if anyone is in disagreement of that idea.
Cannot live. Can anybody not live with? That's the consensus. And you also, and Curtis, I just want you to know that the group that was chosen as negotiators, when they have meetings, they meet regularly. When they have meetings, they come back and report those meetings. And then if there's a decision to be made such as this, then that decision always comes back to this group. So I just want everyone to know that we didn't lay all of that out, but the group meets regularly. And when there's a decision to be made or who goes to meet who, that is always done collectively. And we can do a better job of spelling that out and calling that out. I just wanted to say to Curtis's point that is something that we practice and people hold each other accountable to that. And I want to say the other part is, thank you that, so who cannot live with us responding and participating with the full recognition that we are not negotiating, we're participating to provide advice with the understanding that anything that is done for specifically to benefit this community must be done through a legal binding agreement. I just wanted to clarify the request.
As y'all are thinking, someone in the chat says we need to be on our city council people to make sure they instill amendments to laws and to make agreements between the public and those developers, so different communities won't have to reinvent the wheel. Yes, you know, Chicago had a CBA ordinance, right? Like, it's a very powerful thing that they did. So thank you for mentioning that. Okay. If you feel any type of way, let us know. It seems that we're gonna go forward, and
I don't think I can live with that.
Hello, K. Rogers. How are you doing?
All right. I just don't think I can live with that.
Okay.
They didn't ask us to approve the people that they put on that there, and then they're gonna come back to us and tell us how many people we can have on ours. And a seat at the table, it's really not that important, except to come back and tell us what they decided to do. Because if they're not going to listen to us, what's the point of being there? I don't understand why we need to be there. They have handpicked some people that's going to agree with what they want to do anyway. And then that just puts us in the same situation as them.
Do you see any strength in possibly even attending one meeting and then publicly saying what happened, or no?
I'm not against trying it, but in my gut, when Curtis was talking about living with the other tribe, we have been living with the other tribe, and we saw what they did to Fourth Ward, and we know what their intention is for Third Ward. And that's why we've all come together and said, no, not us, not this time. And so I'm just saying, okay, we can go see how they're going to talk, if they're going to include us, if they're going to consider what we say to them, what we suggest to them. Is there going to be a consideration? But I've sat at tables before where I was just a token and to legitimize what they were doing. And I've spoken up and just disregard it. And so what's the point of legitimizing what they're doing by being there?
And I just want to say that you know what I really think in my heart of hearts is that I believe that I'm hopeful that it's not that the people who are on the other side, right? I'm hopeful that the people that are around the table can be reminded of what's at stake. Because I think that, and I also think that what happened with Fourth Ward is there was no accountability. The reason why Third Ward, it can happen to Third Ward because nobody was held accountable, right? No matter what happens, there will be some accountability, not just to the bad, but to the good as well, right? We reap what we sow, and we can sow what is good and yield God's reward, or we can sow what is not meant for God and meant for self. And if that happens, then those people who are around that room, Mr. Rogers, that table, must be held accountable. That is our duty and responsibility for the next community. So I don't want them to say, no, it didn't happen like that. No, that's not what I said. No, I didn't get a development out of the deal. No, they didn't promise my organization any money. No, you see what I'm saying? I want it to be clear, and I want the record to be told in victory or in protracted struggle. So I think it's really important. This is a hard thing, and I'm not the one. I think there's some people I'm not even on the negotiating team, but I think God has called some people who can do this type of work. But it is a painful thing. And that's why I opened it up by talking about how much mourning I have. But I do believe that we can move the hearts and the minds of men and women through truth. I do. I know you say, oh, it's not even so Pollyanna, kumbaya. But I think that it's possible because we've seen ourselves do it. And I think what we're doing is righteous and it's right and it's evidence-based and data-driven. And so I want them to know that this time our eyes are open, and you will not do this in the cover of dark, but you will operate in light, and we will be the light that will shine on you.
Some other folks in the comments are also saying they think we should attend one meeting, it seems. Oh, let me go backwards, sorry. Someone says that they feels like it sends the wrong message by attending. Another person says that if we're sending a small portion of the team to the discussion table, then I would suggest the rest of the team work on the city side, right? So it's a two-part game, right? To work on the city side as well to move this forward from both sides of the process. I see. Another person says we should attend at least one meeting. Another person is asking if it's possible to present with some sort of ultimatum, right? That's interesting of a question. Someone's asking if we should demonstrate at the meeting. Another person is mentioning that they feel very token as well, or token vibe. Someone doesn't trust their invite whatsoever because of the ways that they've responded already. Someone said if they do ignore, in the case that they do ignore, we can just withdraw our input and cite our reasons for withdrawing, and they can't say that we did participate in that way. We have to do it publicly, it seems. Someone else says if the true decision makers are not at the table, who are we moving with our sacrifices? I see. Yeah, if we're not at the table, then I see. Any other commentary? I want to make that space. Thank you so much. Mr. Rogers, if you have some more commentary, please do come in on this.
Yes, more than anything, I mean, that process of accountability that Assad is talking about, I think that needs to be very clearly defined. I find that to be a lot more interesting than and worth a very deep and serious consideration than whether or not we should be at the table. I think, yeah, it presents an interesting opportunity, and it really can be. We should definitely be cautious and everything like that. But I think how we're going to remain, how that body, the group of people who are going to be in those rooms, and really in any rooms, how are we going to be accountable to the community should be very, very clearly outlined so the expectations are defined.
I see. Thank you. Someone else is asking a question, whether tactics can we use other than sitting at the table to get the CBA signed? Okay, let me push my brain for a second. The press, right? Someone just mentioned the press. However, we are really interested to be very, very, and to remind, someone messaged me something else. To remind you all that we are trying to go about a process that lends itself to the process we always want to technically go by, right? So if we do get a little bit more in the face, whether it be on in the streets or in the press, we want to make sure that we understand, should this be a part of the regular way that we go about things, or should this be how do I say, just a specific tactic that's taking place in this specific scenario, right? I just want that to be understood, right? I don't want every CBA that's taking place in Houston to feel like they gotta struggle as much as we've had, right? But if we have to struggle, just consider that it's a tactic that we're taking advantage of.
And I just want to say that we are attending the TIRZ management meetings and convenings because they have a vote. We have met with we've met with the city council members, we've met with our city council members, we've shared this information. We continue to talk to others who are, who are at the university. So again, I want to say this doesn't preclude anything else. We don't know what's going to happen out of this advisory. They're just meeting. They're meeting to hear what are some of the issues and write a report and say what they're going to do. So they have not committed to a signed agreement, right? They've not committed to a signed agreement one way or the other that involves the community, right? And so I think we still have the goal of educating our community, building this coalition, building the strength of this coalition, so this coalition can exercise its political power to have rights management, because two things can happen. Mayor Turner can say the community will be part of this community benefits agreement, and rights management can say the community must be part of this community benefits agreement. And I think John Jenkins is saying that we should put more and equal pressure on the city council and our city council member and the people around the shoehorn and the mayor to be able to say that the way you have the sworn duty and responsibility to protect communities, and that before you allocate any dollars, do any further development with this deal, that the community should be there. So that still is the strategy, but I accept that people say, well, we continue to do that and don't worry about what they're doing with this group. So again, I want to remind you, we're not saying we're putting our eggs in this basket. We're saying as we continue to do that other work, we want to hear from ourselves who's in that room, what are those discussions, what commitment rights management is making, and be able to, not change our process, but make sure we're keeping a record of what's happening.
The chat is hot right now, but I want to ask, and I don't want to put you on blast, but I do want to make sure that your needs are met, Mr. Rogers, because you said you can't live with it, and I want to make sure you live, man. I want to make sure. What do you think?
Maybe I was just a little bit too passionate, but yes, if we can go there and keep our head on straight, and if those signs pop up that they're just using us, I can't be a sellout. I can't. I literally would die. I cannot. And so then if we see the signs and we say, okay, they're doing it again, and we walk out, and then we have a news conference or whatever we can to blast it out publicly to say, hey, listen, we tried, but they're not listening to us. They're disregarding us. They don't care about us. And so then we're not going to sit at that table with them.
Or we will agree to nothing that comes out. And I think what we want to do is what this city, and I'm just going to lean in, what the Black community and Black leaders are not accustomed to: accountability and transparency, right? And putting the needs of others beyond our own personal aspirations, right?
Yes.
About our own personal aspirations, and not keeping a job or not creating a job for ourselves, but really those residents, those 50, 75 plus renters, those 50% plus 25% homeowners who are paying more than 30%, those 20% of residents, Mr. Rogers, who can't find a job. You know what I mean? So we don't change that, and our conscience will be clean. Our conscience will be clean, and not because we're some sort of superheroes, because this group will hold us accountable. And we have a process that we've committed to. And so we don't have to be superheroes. All we have to do is follow the process that we've committed ourselves to. Because I'm no superhero. I'm just as valuable as everybody else. But I got a Mr. Rogers saying, Asada, that's not what you said. That's not what we committed to. That's not why I joined this, right? We have a group of people who are willing to hold us accountable, and we're willing to be held accountable.
Any other thoughts? Someone's saying, hey, contact Trey the Truth. If you know Trey the Truth, email us at hello@houstoncba.org.
No, we want to go with Toby. I'm going with Toby.
Someone
Y'all
said
can
Toby
take
from the
Trey. I'm
squad.
not throwing Toby. I'm not throwing Trey away, but I'm gonna go for Toby. I'm gonna go for Toby. Yeah, because anyway, I don't want to. And to that point, we are going to have some work group meetings talking about political strategy. Because to the point, we've got to, we have our work groups talking about the subjective matters, and doing the research, and the students are doing an awesome job. John Jenkins with the Black tech work that he's doing. But we also need a group that's working on political strategy, because this is a protracted, struggle. And that's what political base building, community organizing is about. And so we will be doing that.
I wanna echo this one particular point, and I echo it in light of what Mr. Rogers was saying, because I hear him. I've been there too. I'm feeling that. But what my experience tells me, and I think we've all had a history that we share, is that this is a marathon and not a sprint, right? And no matter, let's just imagine a year from now, there's a CBA that's executed with a community. That's just going to be a flag to continue the organizing, because this is going to be a 10-year project. And yeah, you could be in court, but really the solutions are not going to be in court. The solutions are going to be in the contracts that get executed and the work that gets done, the jobs that get done. What are the indicators that say that we are successful, right? 1960, in the 60s, the Voting Rights Act, you had people dancing in the street when that got signed. Look at where we are today. Okay. So we're right back in that battle, different kind of battle, just around the issue, the open question as to whether we have a democracy or not in this country. Now, that's deep, right? And we've got people who are in our Congress who are standing up questioning that. So I don't want to kind of get down about it. I just want to understand, make sure that we all understand that this is a longer term process, that organizing is key. One of the things that Asada has consistently said, and whether I've agreed or disagreed with her about anything, the one point that I know is true is that if we're not organized and we don't constantly do things to organize this community, communicate to the community, strengthen, encourage each other, build each other up, we're not going to get anywhere. And so I would look at this question of attending this circle, participating, or the advisory group or whatever, as a tactical action. It's not strategic. And it's a tactical action to help inform the strategy. And the strategy is going to be constantly refined, and there's going to be a constant evaluation as to whether we're getting there. I mean, this process in and of itself ought to build stronger people in our own community so that we can be more successful, right? We ought not be relying on rights management to make this a healthy community. What we're saying is rights management has a responsibility, but ultimately we're responsible for our own situation. Just like I'm looking up right now, talking to my kids, hey, you got to struggle around voting rights now. So I would be encouraged from the point of view of knowing and being happy that here are all these young people who are now understanding that the process of justice and equity is an ongoing process, and we're going to have to constantly fight. And how do we encourage each other and feed each other to do that work?
So, PK, please go through.
Hello, everybody. Great seeing you, Curtis. Wonderful hearing you, Asada, my comrade in arms. We're co-conspirators when it comes to our community. And one of the things that I wanted to say, and I've kind of said it in the chat, is that just because they say you can't come or limit the numbers doesn't mean you shouldn't go. That's first. It's an uphill battle. It has been for at least the last 150 years, supposedly, when the 13th Amendment was reconstructed. Didn't end slavery, but it looked like it did. And they look like maybe they're keeping us out, when in reality, they can't do this without us, without our community. It just does not work that way. But one of the questions that was asked by somebody that's on the chat is, if we go to the table, what is it that we're going to say that we want, and do that? The other thing is to create, as everybody has really been saying, a real plan of action that includes those politicians. We've got to put them on notice. Who are the politicians that are in our corner here? And lastly, I just want to say, you know, when I look at the young people from Rice University, for 3 years, the freshman class at Rice University came to Third Ward at Project Row Houses and let me take them around to see the community through my eyes. And what I'm seeing is a response to that. I'm seeing this as an outcome to that when I look at the young people who are a part of fighting for us, because they didn't think of Third Ward as the zoo. You come to visit, pet the animals, and you leave. They came and they became part of the community. A lot of these young people are working on their masters and their graduate degrees now. And I got to tell you, they're going to be a force to be reckoned with. And they are our bounty. They're the reason that we do what we do. Third Ward, a place of hospitality for everybody, not just food, but churches and educational institutions, art. We have been the place of hospitality. You can't get rid of that. We've got something that we can barter. And you know what it is? Our leadership. Our leadership has always been one of service. And it's the one thing they don't know how to do, which is why they're always manipulating the system. So, Sonia, hey, how you doing? But that my point is well taken now. I know it hurts. God, KPFT, why do you keep trying? We keep trying because it's not theirs. It's ours. It's we. It's us. So I'm just stop getting mad and let's get even. That's all I can say. Bye.
Thank you so much, PK. Any last comments? Because it seems that it looks like participate, make a plan of action, make sure that plenty of folks have some input on that action. So it seems like there's a need for some meetings on that. And that not only is defensive, but also very, I don't want to say aggressive, or make sure that we are still doing what we need to do at the city level and within the community to make sure education and transparency, I'm writing at the same time, I'm sorry, that's why I'm saying this. Transparency is central, right? Okay.
Accountability, transparency, and accountability, because that's the reason why we're concerned about the people who are chosen to be there, because there's no process of accountability to them, right? They don't belong part of this coalition. They've not created a process inside their organizations that allow their decisions to be checked and to be centered on the needs of the community. That accountability is really important.
Okay, we got to push, we got to haul it. So the students who are listening, I'm gonna take more hours from you. I'm so sorry. Not really. You're here, you're gonna stay. I appreciate y'all. So it looks like we're going to go ahead and draft up a correspondence to Rice Management Company, letting them know about this negotiation team. You will be receiving that before we send that out. So please do check your emails sometime tomorrow, and you'll have that so we can make sure you approve of that. We're going to also try to include some of those, some of the points of dialogue as far as how you may want to be represented, and please make sure you give that feedback. So you make sure in that first correspondence back to RMC, you can tell RMC how you would like to be represented going forward, right? Next slide. We're going to come together before we make a plan. Yes, I'm going to talk about that in a couple seconds as well. Okay, so hold on to that. Last thing, Lozano. We want to give some updates about what's taking place at the TIRZ board, and we're going to explain what the TIRZ is in a second. Next slide. So essentially, RMC is asking for your money, for your public dollars. They're asking for about $75 million of your public funds to build the innovation district. So before this was a private thing. Rice Management Company was using much of the money from their endowment to make this investment. Now they're asking for public dollars from the Midtown TIRZ, the redevelopment agency that collects part of the increased property value and funds the development of improvements in the community, right? They're taking money, they're floating debts of public money pretty much to make sure that this, they want to ask the Midtown TIRZ to float $75 million of public debt over a certain amount of time to build part of their district, right? And what does this mean? Next slide. So this means that basically the funds have to be approved by the Midtown Redevelopment Authority Board. And then that would be approved afterward, process-wise, that would be approved by the Houston City Council. So all things that are approved at the redevelopment agency level, so there are several TIRZs around the city. The TIRZ that we're talking about is the Midtown TIRZ we're trying to get money from. The process looks like any sort of fund allocation to any development would be approved by that board, and then it would be then sent to City Council for approval afterwards. So what do we know, right? Next slide. Right, so this is that process I was discussing. They ask for the money, they have a conversation of whether or not it takes place, and there's a vote. If there's a yes vote on that ask, then it goes to City Council. That's normally what the process looks like. Next slide. So what we know is that because this is inherently your money, right? Because this is inherently money from you, then that means there's even more of an onus to make sure that there's a public accountability process that lasts throughout the entire life of the development and afterwards, right? Some updates is we've been going to Midtown TIRZ board meetings, and we encourage you to do so. We're going to give you an opportunity to do so in a second for the February meeting. And we've been letting the board know exactly what's taking place. We've been encouraging them that if they give any dime to RMC, that they make it a requirement that RMC has a CBA with HCEDD. That's what we've been doing, and many of you have been doing over time. This last January meeting, it was announced that they will have some sort of update or some sort of agreement between their advisory circle and RMC, or some sort of, sorry, they didn't say that. They didn't say the advisory circle. They didn't even mention the advisory circle. They said that they would have some sort of update on the development agreement between the TIRZ and RMC in 60 to 90 days from now. They said that about a week or a week and a half ago. Okay, so that's the update to know. They will have a developer agreement at that time. They didn't say anything about whatever subsidiary agreement that they're doing with a dark room of folks that that haven't been publicly named. They haven't talked about that. But what we know is this is what the timeline looks like for the board at the moment, 60 to 90 days. Any questions on that process real quick? Okay, so what we want to encourage y'all to do, next slide, right? we want to encourage you to attend a meeting. Mary Claire, if you can put that link in the chat and on the Noelle, then you can put it on social media. We want to encourage you to go to the next Midtown TIRZ Board meeting and say the same thing and express your support, right? Express your support. Sign up right now. We just put that link down there. If you sign up, we're gonna make sure that we give you all the information that you need to best form your own remarks to the board. The public comment period takes place at the very beginning of the Midtown TIRZ Board meeting, so you won't be staying very long in order to have your commentary. They're all virtual. You don't have to go anywhere. Next slide. I want to get to the next part. These are the board members. As you can see on our social media, we have been like trying to let y'all know. So in case that you want to see who's on this board, this is the board. Thank you to the graphic designer who made this for free for us. We appreciate you so much. Next slide. Let's see. So that's the next, those are the next two meetings, February 25th and March 25th. They're both at 12:30 p.m. So you log in, and one of the very first things that they do on that board meeting is that they start with public comment, right? There's some things that you need to do. There's a person that you have to email. So what you need to do first is, if you're interested in speaking and expressing your support for that, any sort of dime that they give to RMC, maintain that it needs to have a CBA with it, you should sign up so we can make sure that we give you the information. There are other actions. You can always send a letter to the board members, and we'll try to get information to you on that as well if you sign up. Sorry, that's the corrected link, just dropped in there in case you have some issues. And also social media. So we'll give you some things that you can also put on social media as well. There's one more thing I wanted to mention. I'm so sorry. Give me 1 second. Next slide. Let's see. There we go. Okay, so this is. So I'm gonna give an update, and then so next slide. Okay, so we are close to 8 o'clock, right? The one of many few powers that I have in this space is to like set a meeting and then send an email. So this is what my recommendation is, because I don't want to keep people over time. The original goal was to have y'all as well spend about 55 minutes within the working groups as well, to have some conversation. My recommendation, and I want to see how people feel about this, at the moment, my recommendation is for us to have a solely work group priority conversation next week, this time from 6 to 7:30. So in the case that you're interested, only if you're interested in visiting any one of the 7 working group priorities and having some dialogue about that, because they've been narrowed down over time and folks have been attaching citations and research to it so it can make sure the negotiation team is ready. I want to give the idea from 6 to 7:30 next Tuesday to have that be the sole meaning of the meeting. Are folks really against that? I'll take the fire right now, because
I like that. And I think the one thing that we like about our process is people can ask questions, because part of this is building people's capacity, building their understanding, so that they are, feel informed and adequately engaged. So I like that. I'm willing to. I'm not sure what's happening next Tuesday, but I appreciate y'all. So I'm willing to do what I can to show up and support the community.
So I won't be available next Tuesday. If you can send me the narrowed down version so I can give some input. You notice I'm a talker. I haven't said a word. I just been listening the whole meeting because I'm waiting for my marching orders.
Gotcha.
The bottom line is that power concedes nothing without a demand backed by power. You can't just make a demand, you got to back it. Mm-hmm. Now, if I'm telling y'all, I'm with Asada because I'm listening to her, I'm feeling her passion, And I remember standing with Linwood Johnson at Allen Parkway Village as Judge Hittner signed the final order to fence up the place, to tear it down, to do the Hope 6. Hopeless 6 is what it turned out to be. And now you wouldn't even recognize 4th Ward. And then they desecrated the graves. There was a cemetery. There a whole lot of stuff, man, just came back to me just thinking as she's talking. And it's not just 3rd Ward, but I'm with 3rd Ward. I'm with the Trey. I'm with the Trey. I'm with that. But once 3rd Ward goes, you can kiss off Yellowstone, Sunnyside, and South Park, because that is the most inexpensive land close to, within the proximity of this Ion Center. Better wake up.
Yep, that's right.
It's serious business.
That's right. Yep.
I'm just saying, y'all. I've been out fighting for 33 years, man. This one is the one, man. These people ignore you. You sacrifice like hell. You give it, like Asada went through that whole process. I know what she's talking about. I had the same damn thing happen to me. People messed over me, man. And I just also, okay, I'll take a couple L's, but I ain't taking no more. So y'all better come on with it, because there's a whole lot going on. And this will be your granddaddy's Rice University, Mary Claire. It'll be your great granddaddy's. Well, hell, where black folk couldn't go to the daggone school. It'll be that if we don't stand up and do something.
Thank you so much.
You need to go on and get in. I'm for getting at the table, man, and lay it out them principles, the goals and objectives, and make it clear to these people what it is that we want out of community benefits agreement. Sign one with us, but whatever happens, the bottom line is it better come out equitably. And it need to be something that's binding. Because these people mess over us, man. They don't care nothing about us. We turn our mayor into a real estate developer when these people in Austin gonna cut the taxes and everything. They look, man, them people that hate cities up there because they're turning purple and blue. So they hate our city, they hate our county, and these hillbillies gonna cut our throat, man. And so we're gonna be cut off. So what do we have to do? I gotta develop land to develop taxes and all of that. And so his heart's in the right place, man, but you gotta, hell with trust, man, verify. I don't trust the Russians. They got bombs pointed at us, we got bombs pointed at them. Trust but verify. That ain't no dang on trust. Even the devil can do good with a shotgun to his head. Somebody get the shotgun out, damn it. Let's go to work. Send me the stuff, bro. I love y'all. I'm waiting for my marching orders. Let's get to that table. Let's do what we got to do. And if it stinks, then we get the hell up out of there and we report back to community. I operate different in the mosque. I can make a decision and they're going to follow me. But I am a team player. And you say this is how the process is going, I'm with this team. Right. But when it's time to play the game, put the bat in my hand, baby, and start pitching the ball.
Thank you. Arnetta, the floor is yours.
First, good evening, and Robert Muhammad, you got so much passion. I love it. My name is Arnetta Murray. I'm the councilwoman here in Brazoria County. I have aging parents that live in South Park. So I'm here for their voice. Now, let's be mindful. We have to do what they did to galvanize us to ensure that Biden won. We did postcards. We did a lot of emails. I was on it. I'm telling you, I sent postcards to Georgia. We have to, and they kept feeding us emails every time I look up. It was something. We have to feed the people to let them know what's going on. A lot of people don't know what they're trying to do to the community. But if we feed postcards, we feed emails, we feed Clubhouse. Y'all know about Clubhouse is a new thing. You got to get on the edge. Cutting edge of technology is free, and let's push it and be passionate. Just like they were passionate about getting Biden in. It was crazy what they did. And the same galvanization, the same strategic approach that they did, let's do it for this. And I'm done. And I'm doing this for my parents. Not for me. I live in Brazoria, but I have aging parents that live in South Park. And I don't want them doing what they're doing. And I have my dad's churches in 3rd Ward. So I get it. That's why I'm here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. You're going to be on that political action committee. Yes.
Man, how do you do a clap or applaud or something on this joint, man? I thought I knew Zoom. Go ahead, sis.
Your remarks definitely are all the applause that we need to, especially if you feel anything, go ahead in the chat and really make that well known. You're getting a lot of emojis right now.
So we should set up a meeting. I think you said this. Our action items is that you're going to set up the meeting. Like, we're going to meet next week, and I love what Dr. Muhammad said. If I can't participate, we can create a Google Doc. Some people can review the documents and make their comments to it and participate in that way. And then within the next 2 weeks, we're going to set up a political action committee where we can work on political strategies and actions and really base building. And you're so right. Thank you. Just thank you for saying that, because it was Black people who everybody gave up on in Detroit and Atlanta and then Philadelphia that made sure that the White House went to Biden. And so when we get discouraged, we need to remember those are the least, the last, and the forgotten. And we are the least and the last and forgotten. And we're gonna turn Houston and this place into a new equitable place for communities. So thank you. Thank you.
And last point I'll make before I pass the bucket is that we got to make you when you read America's Declaration of Independence, you have to let people know what it is that you declare, whatever you're going to declare with them. So we got to get the core principles of the CBA in front of their face, so that when they say yes, no, or they try to play games, at that point, man, we go for it. We go for it. But if I don't want them to ever say to anybody on top of the lie that we don't want to be a part of this group, that they don't know what we want. I don't want that. Let's lay the cards on the table. This is what we want. And then at that point, then it's on like popcorn.
And expose those members. Let people know who they are. They think they can get away with it because nobody really knows their faces. But since it's a public position, show the pictures, get it out there through postcards, email, and guess what? When they're shamed, sometimes when you're shamed into doing things, you shirk back a little bit. That's all I will never forget the strategy what Biden M used. Use the same thing and you got it. And I'm done.
And we for sure will we're writing some of these things down right now. And, the hope is, especially for folks who are listening, who are possibly on that advisory council at the moment, we come with immense grace, right? We come with immense grace. So we hope that you also open your arms with the same grace that we come in with, and understand exactly the research and the things that we provide to you. Unfortunately, RMC has not done that, but we hope that you provide that grace as well. If not, Arnetta is very much.
Yeah, that's right, brother. We respect them. We do. But they got to understand what's at stake. Because when you look at the list of the people on there and you line up our principles in our CBA, there's not a match. There's not a match. The things that we have outlined of our work groups, that when I look at the people, I know 90% of the people that's on that rights management thing. I know them. That's not what they do. So if we want to make sure that these issues that we listed out in our work groups are addressed, then we gotta narrow them down, make them clear, and we gotta go to the table with them. Otherwise, they can say, "I didn't know."
And this is my last.
They're listening to us. They're on tonight.
And this is my last statement. You're absolutely right. I'm a councilwoman, so I have to speak with grace. You're absolutely right. Non-emotion, you're absolutely right. But even within a non-emotional appeal, you have to be passionate and understand that what we're doing is very vital. And people will respect that because you're caring about everybody. So yes, it's grace. But yes, we got a strategic plan because this is people's very lives are at stake. So that being said, passion is nothing wrong with passion. It's nothing wrong with the love and understanding, because how would they feel if it's their people, if their relatives? So you got to put it in that context. And I'm really done tonight.
So what we're going to do is actually go to slide, actually stay on this slide. Hot off the press, Mary Claire has just made a link for you to sign up for next week. Let's give a clap for Mary Claire, because that's quite impressive. Go ahead and drop that link in the chat. And then Noelle, go ahead and give the people on social media that as well. And I would need y'all, for folks who are interested in any one of our 7 working groups. Can you go to slide 50, Alec? Next one after that. There we go. If you're interested in talking about the priorities have gone through a lot. So you're gonna see a lot in the meeting. So if you're interested in talking about any of the priorities, we'll do as much as possible to try to get it to you a little bit beforehand, or for folks who are not good, we'll try to figure out how to make some sort of survey form to still get your input. We'll figure out how to do that, but you need to sign up in order for us to know that you want us to send that to you. So please do sign up immediately. This is also on our link tree. All these signups are on our link tree at the moment. So also drop that link tree again for folks in case that you lose any of these links. The Midtown link is on there. Next week's link is on there. Let's go to slide 52 so I can let y'all go to dinner or, you know, take a nap. Because it's important to nap. People forget that. Actually, Mary Claire, I want to give this to you. How do you want to take this slide?
All right. So this is things that we need from each other to keep doing this work, and this is the only way we've made it this far, because we've had each other's curiosity, each other's persistence. Curiosity. Every single question. And this is why we say we need to ask questions, because that's how we learn. Because without everyone's question here, then we wouldn't get to this shared understanding and the shared goal and strategy and vision. So thank y'all for that. And we have thrived because of each other's persistence, because of each other's creativity. If y'all see all of these, every single flyer and these graphics that a lot of students are making, shout out to them. They don't have their names on, signed on that, but it really goes such a long way to get this message out to the public. And someone in the chat mentioned, does the organization have the funds to make and send massive postcards to educate the public about the CBA? I love that idea. If y'all do too, let us know. There's also, we have some funds, but you can add to those funds on Cash App at $HCEDD. So that will help us make that happen. We have thrived off each other's technical expertise. Shout out to all the students running, UIOSA is running a live stream today. So huge shout out to UIOSA for triple multitasking. And thank you for all of your joy, laughter, and friendship, and for your social media clout, because that's one way that we can educate each other and educate the public, educate our elected officials. And that's all.
Next slide. Yeah, so I want to give you all the opportunity to follow us on social media in the case that you do want to donate. And that's an interesting thing to do, some sort of postcard or kind of like thing that we can drop off at people's doorsteps. That's very helpful. So if you have any funds and you're familiar with Cash App, it's $HCEDD. That's the way that we're going about our funds at the moment. And yeah, I wanted to close this out because we're 4 minutes over, and I want to see y'all next week. So we're going to send an email about this meeting, perhaps tomorrow or latest the next, but we move as fast as possible for y'all. So thank you. And Alec, if you can take
thank you to the students. I just want to publicly say thank you. Ella Baker was right when she said this, the youth are the future. They're the ones who have the courage when we fail. And so thank you to the students, because you don't have to do what you do. You don't live here. Your parents didn't grow up here. This community, you don't have the emotional attachment, but you have the moral fortitude. And so I'm forever grateful to you and your commitment. And I'll see everybody next week.
See y'all. Alec, can you give us a little?
Are we going to go out with our theme song? I really need to hear Toby again one more time.
Yes, we will. Go ahead, Alec.
Everybody that's racist that getting exposed, you know what I'm saying? I ain't gonna lie to you. It's a beautiful time. No. Shout out to all the black people who feel liberated and you feel like you could be your whole black self.
I'm 100% with you, and we about to give you some of this black love, even with my white counterpart in the band. We're gonna give you some black love right now. Here we go. Let's get it.
Hey, look, I hope you catch a wave.
Talk to him.
Doesn't subside. This for the nappy heads in heaven. With the nappy head Christ by their side. I pray you catch a wave.
Yeah.
Doesn't subside. This for the nappy heads in heaven. The nappy head Christ by their side.
Yeah.
May your streets be paved with gold.
Yeah.
Hope my whole hood make it home.
Yeah.
May your streets be paved with gold. Hope my whole hood make it home.
Cause the world can be toxic, especially when your skin look like chocolate. At one point they sold us for profit, but we made it out of the gauntlet we chosen.
Yeah.
On my mama, the south side still holding.
Yeah.
Go for broke for the ones that are broken.
Yeah.
Please don't make me no hashtag a slogan. My whole hood is golden. That's why
I pray you catch a wave. Doesn't subside. This for the nappy heads in heaven. The nappy head Christ by their side. I pray you catch a wave. Doesn't subside. This for the nappy heads in heaven. The nappy head Christ by their side.
Yeah.
May your streets be paved with gold. Hope my whole hood make it home. May your streets be paved with gold. Hope my whole hood make it home.
cause they riding with choppers. It might turn your table to pasta. Don't hardly see daughters at altars. Probably cause there ain't no more fathers, they stole them.
Yeah.
Put in cages by racists patrolling.
Yeah.
The hood is a lane to the pins like we bowling.
Yeah.
Please don't make us no hashtags or slogans.
Yeah.
Black people are golden, that's why
I pray you catch a wave. It doesn't subside. This for the nappy heads in heaven. Nappy head Christ by their side. I pray you catch a wave. It doesn't subside. This for the nappy heads in heaven. Nappy head Christ by their side. May your streets be paved with gold. Hope my whole hood make it home. May your streets be paved with gold. Hope my whole hood make it home.
I hope you make it home.
Yeah.
I hope you make it home.
Every hood.
I hope you make it home. Whoa. I hope you make it home. I hope you make it home. I hope you make it home. Yeah.
I hope you make it home.
I hope you make it home. I hope you make it home.
Make it home. Talk to him, Luke.
Make it home.
Talk to him, Luke.
Make it home. Make it home. I hope you make it home.
Talk to him, Dave.
I hope you make it home.
Yeah.
I hope you make it home.
Black people.
I hope you make it home.
Come on, come on.
Whoa.